from me from Central European time zone. I guess, Raphael, for you, it's something else, isn't it?
Good morning, indeed. 10 a.m., just a few minutes after 10 a.m. here
Sounds
in
cool.
California. Yeah.
Okay, good to be back. We had a little break since our last episode. So normally we do this weekly. We had a longer pause, and part of the reason was me traveling. Part of the reason was Raphael's preoccupation on his farm. And for those of you who are watching this for the first time, I'm not talking about some figurative farm. Raphael is a real farmer with a real physical farm. Right, Raphael? How is that going with your harvest?
Harvest is going smoothly, Alesh. I think we're going to be wrapped up in the next 2 to 3 weeks, which will be about 4 weeks faster than last season. So that's a really good thing.
Okay, I just clocked off from the office and I'm thinking percentages. What is it? The year-over-year improvement, stuff like that. So that's impressive. How are you feeling?
Feeling good today. Glad to be back. I kind of miss doing this. 1 week and then 2 weeks. So we're on a roll. I think this is episode 20. Is it not?
This is episode 20 indeed. So that's a 20th anniversary, whatever it is. I don't even know.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are watching this accidentally, we are actually having these talks on pretty much weekly basis. And what we are doing is me and Raphael are catching on the commitment we took on to, let's say, enhance our lives. And also we are discussing at least one fairly deep topic regarding life and death and personal, professional, whatever development issues. Sounded very cheesy to me. Raphael,
Life
would you add
and death
something?
and all the stuff in the middle, that little bit in between.
Got it. Well, so I guess I'll try to get back on track with this, because what we used to do is we started with that kind of weekly check-in. So how was our week for us? Are we going to go through that in a couple of minutes? Basically, what me and Raphael are trying to do is have certain commitments that lead to healthier habits. And we wanna kind of check how it was going, being very open about it. If something is not going well, we want to tell you. So that's what it is. And since I have been kind of naughty last week, I didn't do most of my work. Raphael, I'm gonna let you go first.
Well, as far as the no phone after 8:30, it's been mostly on point. There's been a couple exceptions. Last night, I found myself doing our weekly check-in for our group that we're in. I just started right around 8:30 and was feeling the resistance of procrastinating till the last minute of the day, feeling tired, didn't want to do it, and it felt kind of forced. And I shut down after that. I should note that in the last week, I implemented another phone restriction, which is the first hour of the day, which I've been talking about doing. And that's actually been surprisingly smooth and easy to just delay, taking my phone off airplane mode and doing any kind of email, scrolling, anything like that. The exception is a guided meditation. I often do 10 or 20 minutes while I wait for my kids to get ready, and then I drive them to the school bus. So I allow myself for that. Otherwise, no social media, news, email, or anything until at least an hour after I've been up. Yeah.
That's pretty cool, and I realize it's a good one because that might be easier. I'm normally going into flight mode at the end of the day, and not switching it on might be less tricky for me than the commitment to switch it off. So what happened for me on this area is I've been traveling last week, and I've been traveling to Italy, and in Italy their habits around bedtime are kind of different than they are in my region. So 8:30 switching off phones proved to be completely unrealistic, and the sleep hygiene didn't work for me that well. So I'm back at home, which in case you don't know, it's Luxembourg, and I'm gonna be trying this week again. So that. I am still, by the way, keeping up my promise about restricting caffeine in the afternoon hours. So no coffee in the afternoon. I think it's still helping. And Raphael, I think you are religious about it by now. So you even cut off tea. Is that right?
No, I took a break off all caffeine for a few weeks, and
Hmm.
I'd been doing coffee for many, many years, and I've recently switched to tea, which I'm really enjoying. I'm having some pu'er tea right now, loose leaf, and I usually drink 1 to 2 cups of tea per day, and also try to cut it out by 12:30. Sometimes these days, sometimes 1:30, but I find any later than that, and it starts to kind of creep into my evening a little bit. Um, I'm in bed pretty early. And the thing that came to mind when you were talking about being in Italy and staying up was when in Rome, right? So you're hanging out with the Italians. I think that's a really good reason to make exceptions, you know.
Um, I guess I'm gonna kind of recommit to what I've been doing. So I'm gonna keep coming back to the habits I found useful. I realized, and me and Raphael had a short conversation about this offline, that the challenges change with seasons. So as we are approaching the winter seasons, there's fewer light available during the daytime. It's affecting the energy levels I have. It's affecting my commitment and my willingness to kind of go into these things. And I think this is important thing for all of you to think about. How seasonally you are effective. How is it for you, Rafael?
Absolutely, especially being on a farm, and having we have one harvest a year, and so there's absolutely a noticeable change in seasons. It's been very cold this last week. Well, for California, 37 degrees Fahrenheit this morning, which is just a little bit above freezing, so pretty cold. And yeah, we're getting less hours of light, and so there's a real urge to kind of go inward a little bit more, slow down a little bit more. I'm noticing there's a lot more resistance to planning and goal setting happening right now, and so kind of learning to work with that. Changes in the diet as well, seasonally, a little bit less going from the smoothies to the soups, a little bit less salads, a little bit more warm foods versus cold foods, and there's a little bit of Ayurvedic influence in that. So yeah, I invite anyone watching to experiment a little bit with that, and if you are watching, what have you noticed with the change in the season for yourself?
Exactly, because if you are watching and if you're watching live as this is happening, of course you can use the chat and let us know. We're going to see it immediately and we're going to react. We're going to do, oh, incredible, or something like that. So you can kind of prompt us to do that. Before I close this check-in, I wanted to say, Raphael, you inspired me to cut caffeine completely. So I'm craving this kind of warm beverage in the evenings, but this is chamomile tea, which is not tea at all, I guess. And I didn't like it at first, but I kind of got used to it. So it's warm, it serves the purpose, and it was surprisingly easy to switch. I was resistant way beyond the time it took to actually get used to it.
Yeah, it's incredible how quickly we can change. Even with like hyper palatable foods, after a few days, just a few days of giving them up, things that taste kind of bland start to taste not so bad.
Exactly. So, well, I'd say this was the check-in. This was, how our weekly commitments went, and I just put the title in there. It should have been there from the start. But being vocally self-critical, away with the title, and let's talk about our main topic for today. And those of you who may have watched the previous episode, you know that we committed to talk about finding a balance or finding a way to kind of marry the two approaches that might be in opposition of them. How to plan for the future, how to plan long term, how to make goals, versus how to stay focused on the present. And it is our kind of topic that is returning. I would like to go deeper on this one. We wanted to go a little bit more technical, sharing maybe some book tips, sharing some actionable tips for you, but also sharing how we approach this from different angles in our lives. So, Raphael, you picked the topic for today. I love the way you phrased it. How to stay focused on the present while planning for the future. So what comes up for you around this topic?
Yeah. So I think there is absolutely a way where we can be grounded in the present and be planning for the future. But I think there are some important distinctions. A lot of us tend to worry about the future, right? We worry about what might go wrong. If we set a new goal and we don't meet it, what might that say about us? How might we feel if we fail or if things inevitably go wrong? And usually when that's happening, we have kind of drifted away from the present. There is a way where we can use constructive thinking and applied thinking while very much remaining in the present, right? If you're planning an event, your wedding, a party, your work trip, vacation, whatever. One indicator for me is if I find myself batching concerns, like if I find myself worrying about things that aren't even related, it's a good indicator for me that I've drifted away from the present moment. Like maybe I'm thinking about 5 different things I have to do while I'm trying to, think about a goal or make a plan. That's a pretty good indicator that I've kind of veered off track a little bit. So how do we stay grounded in the present while making plans for the future? And I think it's very much possible. I think the challenge for most people is the staying grounded in the present to begin with, right? Many of us tend to live our lives in the past and in the future. We have our concerns, we have our worries, and yeah, this is something I think that takes a lot of practice, and not something that is perfect. In other words, we may begin planning and we may find ourselves drifting, and this is an opportunity to kind of return back. And so I think working on getting grounded and present is a good place to start. And yeah, for me, I've noticed that the kind of times that I pick for this type of thing. So again, let's make a distinction between like applied thinking and applied planning versus worrying or ruminating. I notice for myself, if I put something off until later in the day, a great example would be my check-in from the other day. And now I'm kind of fishing for material, and I'm kind of feeling like I'm swimming upstream a little bit, and all the kind of self-doubt and stuff creeps in, and very easy for me to no longer be worrying about how I might appear or what I might sound like, or, oh, this sounds stupid or whatever. Whereas if I carve some time out earlier in my days, when I'm more rested, when I'm more resourced, and set a chunk of time aside. In other words, I'm going to do this, plan this for an hour or 30 minutes versus kind of looping through the concerns throughout the day as they creep in and out, if that makes sense. That was kind of the distinction that I was trying to make here.
I think I looking back at the days when I was able to do that, I'm always more rested and more focused when I'm able to block time. It's the interesting part here is what we discussed in a check-in today. When you keep your devices on flight mode, it's easier. I realized I'm more I can do things before I fire up my computer, because then all of those instant messengers are starting screaming at me. But I would like to go beyond the obvious here, or at least what seems like that for me. And there's a kind of dilemma I have when approaching this. Something we haven't discussed yet, Raphael, and I wonder what was your take on that. So there's a difference between being focused on the present in maybe it will sound weird, but in a kind of meaningful way, versus being focused on the present in a superficial way. To give you an example, there's someone who's flicking through the Facebook messages and scroll down for update. This person is living in the present in a way, right? But in a virtual reality of distractions, in a reality of constant excitement, these dopamine rushes.
Yes.
But that's probably not being in a present in a way you meant, is it?
No, I wouldn't say so at all. And in fact, when we are scrolling through a social media feed, there's something like 10,000 context changes per minute. This is something that's completely unprecedented in the history of our existence as humans. We've never had any kind of technology that has so rapidly changed context for us. And so I think that is one of the more challenging places to navigate while staying present, because there's constant comparison and, craving and desire. And I mean, there's just, again, thousands and thousands of context changes per minute. So that's a very challenging place to work with this.
I mean, for me, it feels the same. Like you only live in the present, surprise, surprise. So there's you can't be anywhere else physically. However, we know as humans that there is future coming, and we know that the future depends on our present actions. And I see two ways of looking at it, and bear with me here. So first of all would be live in the present, live in the moment, versus plan for the future. Think about your future self, think about your future self happiness. And most often we consider them to be in opposition. I can spend my money now, or I can save them for the future. I can succumb to some temptation to get a cake or a nap or whatever now, selling out my future self. But what you're suggesting seems that there's a different distinction in place. So this trade-off mentality may not be necessarily the only way to look at it. Do I get it right?
Yeah, I think you're onto it there. I think you're talking about delaying gratification a little bit, and again, there's an awareness. So it's very much possible to be looking out for our future self, right? Which is, like you mentioned, it's always the present moment. They're not exclusive. We can make plans for our future from a place of groundedness, of awareness now. In fact, I would say that from that place, we're more likely to make more sound decisions for our future, right? When we are in a place of concern, worry, scarcity, we're likely to make decisions out of fear, and we're not usually in the present moment when we're coming from that place. At least I've certainly found that to be true for myself. And again, this is something that takes constant work and practice. It's returning. Yeah, I don't know anyone who's just always living in the present moment with no distraction or getting pulled out. So It's you know what can we do when we do get pulled out, and how do we stay grounded in the present while being able to look ahead and plan ahead for our future selves.
I like you mentioned the fear, or the making this decision out of fear or being pulled in a million directions. So there's just wanted to say that there is a compelling body of scientific evidence showing that making decisions, out of deprivation leads to very, very poor decisions that are not serving you well in the moment. They are not serving you well long term. Two examples, you all know, if you go shopping, grocery shopping hungry, a state of deprivation, you're not going to shop healthy at the same time. And another example, also shopping, people with a lower income, people who are worried about whether they can get by financially, they are actually less able to make good decisions when it comes to money and shopping. They are more susceptible to be, driven by these shiny discount labels that don't actually mean any discount. So I think that's the first I would say rule that you can apply, and we all can, improving decision making in the present. That would be good also for the future. Try not to operate from the state of fear of deprivation. And if you feel you're there, get out of there first before you take important decisions.
Right. And often that, state of fear, fight, flight, freeze can lead more to indecision than, making a bad decision, not being able to make any decision at all and feeling really frozen in the moment. I've certainly experienced that even in the last week or two, I can say.
I'm experiencing them when the connection is bad, being frozen in a moment. Happens all the time now, COVID times.
Exactly. Luckily, no one's watching, right?
Exactly. Now, my mom is watching, but she doesn't understand English.
Hi, Mom. Alesha's mom.
Now, so, I'm wondering if we go into something practical, tangible, and before we started this broadcast, Raphael, I was thinking about this example. So I was thinking about what for me would be an embodiment of work or activity that's meaningful in the moment, yet also represents planning for the future. And what came to mind for whatever reason was the cathedral in Barcelona. It's called Sagrada Familia.
Sagrada Familia. I've been there. Yes.
And for those of you who are not familiar with that, you definitely want to Google the images of Sagrada Familia. It's an amazing cathedral being built by the architect. Oh my God, I can't remember his name now, but I'll look it up.
I can't help you with that one.
The point is, he started building this magnificent cathedral 100 years ago, and he spent the better portion of his life living in there and designing and supervising the works of the cathedral that he knew at some point that it's not going to be finished during his lifetime. And I'm imagining this type of work being totally immersed in, designing the gargoyles and working on design elements and adjusting while also working towards something bigger, something long term. And I realized, however idealized this is, it represents how I would want to feel in life. And this me rambling here is, I'm trying to find a way to get there or closer to this.
You're actually really onto something, Ales. And I think there's a beautiful merger of neuroscience and even some Eastern philosophy here. The phrase "you are entitled to the action only, not the reward." From a brain chemical standpoint, there's a huge advantage to falling in love with the activity for the sake of the activity, right? Not for the outcome necessarily. I'm not going to attempt to explain the science because I'm not a neuroscientist, but there is some excellent stuff on it. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, Andrew Huberman had a great podcast on dopamine and all the different ways in which we can help regulate our dopamine release. He mentioned, some of the activities that release dopamine, increase dopamine, the different ways in which it's released, substances, activities, and how certain activities increase. We get kind of a rush of dopamine, but then they may decrease our baseline, and you might start to feel kind of crappy for a while after that. So some great ways on how to mitigate that. One of the things he mentioned, and I think this is applicable here, was how he's kind of limited bringing his phone into the gym for his workouts, and because he was layering dopamine on top of dopamine. In other words, if you bring your phone with you to your workout every time and you have a podcast or your music on, you're likely to get less enjoyment from just the activity of the workout on its own. You will then continue to want the music or the podcast or all of the different things. And so, now he's kind of limited how many times he's doing that. I'm looking at experimenting with that myself. I found for myself, it's very distracting, and I end up wanting to do other things, and my training sessions end up going much longer, not because I'm getting more training value out of them, but because I'm, going from one thing to the next. So the work for the sake of the work, there's really something to that. And it doesn't mean we aren't focused on an outcome, right? We're motivated by outcomes, right? And even when it comes to, like picking berries off of a bush or whatever, or working on a project, or, the anticipation you get before a meal, or sex or a substance, or you name it. But can we fall in love with the activity, or at least train ourselves to get enough enjoyment from the activity itself that we're not just hinging on the result and waiting, and then ultimately disappointed, or we get that big rush after achieving what we want, and then we sink down to a lower baseline than where we were at before. Are you muted, Alesh? I can't hear your audio.
I am, but I use my hands, so hopefully
your hands.
This stands for dopamine stacking. So I was saying I like the idea of dopamine stacking, and I was not aware of this, and so that's something to test and implement. So I'm not going to combine coffee and chocolate anymore, because that's wasteful. And
so interestingly enough, caffeine acts a little bit differently, but chocolate is said to increase your dopamine 2.5 times, so 250%, which is I believe the same as, I may have butchered that one, but I think nicotine is right there, the same, as well as sex. And it's only when you get into some much more serious substances that it's much further beyond that. Yeah.
Interesting. Now I want to see a chart or something, and I'm thinking of all the possible combos of these. So that's what I'd like to kind of get to, and this is it got to me as you were talking. So you said originally that we should kind of start from the present. We should start from being kind of grounded in a present. However, and that's the tricky part for me. You also said, and I agree with that we are motivated by the outcomes. So, and you basically suggested this dopamine stacking suggests that it makes sense to sculpt our activities in the present based on the outcomes we're expecting. So, is that a contradiction? Because suppose I want to have savings for, I want to save for my retirement. I want to, or for whatever. Let's keep it neutral. I want to save. Money over time, which means certain type of restricting my spending in a present. Do I start from the present here, or do I start from the future? How do you see it?
That's an interesting question. I think you can only start from the present. I mean, if you're already there, you're assuming you're going to live long enough to retire, and that, whatever the motivation for your savings is. But if you can tap into where you are now and get behind the why is it important for you to save? Why is it important for you to restrict your spending? And what is it going to do for you now? Aside from the temporary, we all know that temporary rush quickly subsides, right? From shopping, eating, whatever the activity, that this rush is very short-lived, right? So it's kind of like the marshmallow test that we've mentioned before, right? You can spend your money now, or you can save and have a little bit more later.
What is intriguing here is we are, the experts suggest to work with visioning exercises. Put yourself in the future and try to make it as salient as possible. Try to feel how it's gonna be when you're there. So kind of bringing the vision of your goal into the present. But at the same time, I think what I struggle with lately with this idea that we should kind of love and embrace the present activity, however unpleasant it is how is goal setting meaningful if part of our living in the present is loving the present, whatever it is. Isn't goal setting actually saying that I want the present to be different?
Not necessarily. I think it's possible to plan for your future with the awareness that those outcomes aren't necessarily going to change your baseline, right? We've heard this, for example, people who win the lottery. It's been said that after approximately 6 months, they return to the same level of satisfaction that they felt for life prior to winning the lottery. Obviously, there are some variables. If you were living in extreme poverty and you're no longer in poverty, there's going to obviously be a substantial increase in your quality of life. But for the average person, let's say your basic necessities are met. The data suggests that after 6 months, after you kind of exhaust all the shiny things that, having a windfall of money and opportunity brings, you're likely to drop right back down to where you were prior. And so it's great to set goals. I think one of the issues is when we believe that is going to lead to a different outcome, or that the outcome is going to lead to a different feeling or a different sense of purpose or satisfaction than it's likely to do. And I think one example is like, running a marathon or doing extreme sports, like what's going to happen after that finish line. And it doesn't mean that there isn't value in pursuing those things. But I think it's important to recognize that they're not, it's not like a permanent, and again, there's a chasing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So can we set goals? Can we envision a future? Can we continue to improve our circumstances in life? And I find that the biggest motivator for me for improving my circumstances are outside of myself. In other words, when I think about my family, when I think about my children's future, when I think about wanting to leave them some abundance in the future, that is more motivating than thinking, oh, if I reach this level of financial security, I'll be less stressed out, or I can take more vacations or whatever. At this stage in my life, I'm aware that a lot of those things don't necessarily bring me more joy. Like I'll give you an example, where, as you know, our group is planning a trip to Costa Rica in January. And from where I'm sitting now, a lot of the kind of life costs, not the financial costs so much, but the sacrifices associated with going are present for me. So I'm less present to, Costa Rica is going to be wonderful and it's tropical and it's going to be fun, of like, what an inconvenience it's going to be for me. So this is a really interesting, I think it's kind of logistical and personal, and like leaving family behind and that kind of thing for me. And so there's the allure of a shiny vacation, and then there's the awareness of the reality that things seldom go the way that you picture that they are going to go, right? There's like the shiny brochure version of what a vacation is. And then there's the reality with the flights getting delayed and, the cramped seat and the person coughing on you and whatever else the reality becomes.
It's very true, and I like you mentioned this very example, because it ties into the way the behavioral scientists recommend to approach goal setting and the reflection of the goals you have accomplished. So it always looks shinier when you are envisioning it, and it always feel easier. So there's a phenomenon called planning fallacy. Normally we think things will take half the time and half the effort than they usually take. So with the vacation, with any goal, with any success, what for example Dan Ariely, behavioral economists suggest is to use the period before you go to vacation, if it's a vacation, to kind of look forward to it, to think about it. And you can put anything instead of vacation. It could be a chocolate bar. Do not run through the experience of vacation, but devour it slowly. Before you even go there, think about it, enjoy the idea, and then spend a lot of time after it's over reflecting on it and practicing gratitude. And I mentioned that, Raphael, because I think this kind of ties. There's another way this could tie together the present and the future thinking, because what we do to ourselves often, I do it all the time, is I plan for something, I achieve it, and then I'm looking at the next thing immediately, instead of enjoying the victory, enjoying the achievement, being with it, really reflecting how much it improved the life of people I'm trying to serve, how much I have learned. And this is how we work on a society level, speed running through these milestones for no real reason.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To add to that, I think having some equanimity and not allowing yourself to become overly joyous in your wins. I'm not saying you shouldn't celebrate your wins. You should absolutely celebrate your wins. But it can be helpful to have an awareness that if we let ourselves get too high, there's going to be an inevitable drop from there, right? So we should acknowledge our wins. But I mean, we're all familiar with that feeling of like riding a little bit too high from an experience, and then the inevitable drop that follows. I've certainly found that to be true.
I think it's also you said it earlier, Raphael. It's about finding where you are to what is your pitfall, your usual pitfall. Do you seem to be, are you the person who is overjoyous most of the time, versus are you the person who is always pessimistic? So finding some, experimenting maybe even, with both approaches, and finding where your center lies and what brings you the biggest benefit long term. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Not succeeding. But I'm learning.
Practicing. Yeah. And can we stay grounded despite the pendulum swings? Can we maintain a sense of balance regardless of the circumstances? There's a certain level of detachment almost, and it's not a refusal to feel what's there. In fact, I think quite the opposite. But if we are at the whim of our life circumstances, then we're going to have a pretty drastic emotional roller coaster experience of our life, where when things are really good, we feel really high, and when things are crappy, we feel really, really low. And that's not a fun experience. I feel I lived a good portion of my life in that way, and I think I'm just starting to learn how to be a little bit less impacted by that. And that doesn't mean that I'm not impacted by it at all, right? And I think there are different things that come into play. Like there are moods and there are emotions, and those two are very distinct. Emotions can come on in a moment. We've all seen a child throw a tantrum, or one sibling takes the toy or whatever from the other one, and boom, emotional explosion, right? And we can usually pinpoint what causes or triggers our different emotions. And emotions are usually kind of shorter lived. They can have a very, very short lifespan, moments or minutes, sometimes longer. Whereas a mood, sometimes we wake up in a mood and we really don't understand where that particular mood came from, and it may last hours or days, or and sometimes even longer. And so there's a distinction there. And I think this is why it's so important to cultivate our ability to really be mindful, so we can notice that and not be living our life in a trance, completely consumed by thought, identifying with every next thing that comes to mind.
Yeah. No, I like this distinction, and I'm thinking now of the long term versus short term. For some reason I'm thinking of the difference between the weather and climate. So as I see it, you wanna be able to shoulder the bad weather and not to be thrown off. You probably want to be equipped to handle it, while curating and observing, bringing more awareness to the climate of self and who you are, where you're going. But maybe that's too abstract.
No, I don't think so. And I think that's a great example, and we can take that even further. If you're planning a trip, you can be lost in thought and worrying about the rain. Oh, it's going to rain. What if it rains and it's going to suck and all this? Or you can say, the weather might be bad. I think I might pack a couple extra layers. Maybe I'll make sure to have a raincoat, and I think this way I'll be dry. And you can kind of stay centered and be able to foresee that there may be some conditions that are less friendly, and that a little bit of preparation will take you a long way, rather than kind of freaking out about what may or may not happen, right?
Yeah. As some bikers say, there is no bad weather for biking, there's only inadequate clothing. So there you go.
Yeah.
It's I'm thinking now, since we are almost at time, I'm thinking where to bring it next time. And I have a couple of ideas, Raphael, but I'd like to hear from you. Maybe you have some. Let me just get off my chest what I'm thinking. So I looked up the architect of the Sagrada Familia, and his name is Antoni Gaudí. Like, oh, how could I have forgotten? I'll put the link into the chat in here for everybody. And I'm thinking about again how he may have felt, and when he was aging, living or spending most of his days in this workshop in Sagrada Familia, knowing that it's not going to be finished, and he could have felt frustrated. He could have felt, oh my God, whatever I do, I need to I need to work faster, and it's never going to get finished anyway, so it's kind of pointless. Or he could have been, joyful working on the project of his dreams, which this magnificent building obviously was, and he could have envisioned the achievement, the complete goal, and being grateful for contributing to it. So to large extent, it is a choice. And the reason I'm mentioning it, I know we touched on the topic, but we never dedicated an episode to that. It's the death contemplation, right? He must have been there contemplating death many times, realizing the magnificent, the scope of the goal and his limited time. So I would like to talk about that, how the impeding, the limited time we have is affecting the way we approach things and how it should affect us.
I think that's a great topic, Ales. And one that we would all benefit from exploring further. I'm not muted. Can you hear me? Yes? No? No?
Something with the audio, I guess. I'm gonna think that I left you speechless for this deep thought, but there's probably something else. So I don't know if this the source of the.
Can you hear me now?
Of the signal, no. But I don't see you as muted.
I am not muted.
You may want to try to switch to the internal mic in the laptop just for the time being to see if that helps.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
No, nothing yet.
Oh well. Okay.
Okay.
How about now?
Bad. So what I suggest you do, Raphael, we still have some time left. If you log off and on, I'll wait here and talk logistics with our people. And if you come back within 2 minutes, maybe it will be resolved if you restart the browser. So we give Raphael time to refresh the system. What I wanted to say in the meantime is for those of you who are watching this for the first time, or for those of you who are watching this for many times and expect some logistical information, me and Raphael are discussing the.
Hello.
Okay, let's see. It's Raphael. We can see you. Can't hear you though.
Can't hear me. Okay.
Not yet. If I mute you and unmute you.
How about now?
Interesting. Let me see if it's possibly on me. Okay, possibly not. So what I'm gonna do, let's use the last minutes in here for me to kind of explain what we're doing. My name is Ales, and my good friend Raphael, with whom we are having these talks every week, are eager to bring it further. and come up with topics that are actually bringing something meaningful to our lives, but also to lives of you, our viewers. So please interact with us in a chat. Let us know how we can improve this. I have already discussed this with a few people who are watching this, and we're going to try to bring more structure into this. In any case, we will continue on at the same time, Tuesdays, and we will talk about probably, the finite amount of time we have in life and how it affects our goal setting. So thank you for today. Thank you, Raphael, for being with me again. You radiate calm despite the fact that your mic failed you. We're gonna see the rest of you next week, Tuesday, same time, with the new topic. So thanks a lot. Have a lovely evening if you're in my time zone, or morning if you're in Raphael's time zone. Bye.
Ciao.